Hello and welcome back to Along the Edge. Well, the party last time could have gone better and I still wish I would have talked to Frank instead of the old lady, but what's done is done, and yeah, let's see what this chapter brings. Chapter 4, November. She was transferred to intensive care last night. And she died this morning. The doctors did all they could, but they said her chances of survival were very slim. How did I get here? We're already well into November, yet I feel as though the cocktail party happened just yesterday. When Yves Malter unveiled the statue of the Sphinx that looked exactly like the one I saw in my dream, it was as though I was struck by lightning. There in front of me was the confirmation of an intuition that's clung to me since I've arrived here at the village. The feeling that there was something, somewhere, that would give meaning to all this. Something that I grasped at, but which slipped between my fingers like a trickle of water. I've decided to consider it as a strength I could tap into, rather than as a bottomless existential abyss. And this belief spreads into something else, something better that guides me, helps me through the everyday trials of life. Frank went back to the city 3 days ago. He has to supervise some works there. He told me he'd be away until the end of the month at least. After what happened at the cocktail party, Stan and his stolen kiss, there's been a coolness between us, but he's finally begun to realize it wasn't my fault. I don't know how to feel about his sudden departure. Is he thinking of leaving the village for good? And then Stan tried to call me. Or rather, my voicemail has been completely deluged with his messages. I was so angry at him. I must admit I deleted them without even listening. Miss de la Tour? Are you all right? You look upset. What happened exactly? How did she get in the accident? Here's what her sister told me. Béatrice Lévesque took the cliff road to pick up her son Jean-Baptiste after a soccer game. The car seems to have skidded on a patch of ice. But why telling me all this? It's terrible. Of course it's terrible. And does it have anything to do with what happened at the party? It's terrible. It's terrible when I think of her son. Yes, as his class teacher, I count on you to be watchful. Jean-Baptiste is going to need our support to get through this. Also, I'm sorry to talk about it under these circumstances, but I did want to see you anyway. I know you're only here as a substitute, but we're very happy with your work so far. As you might have heard, Mr. Galvin is retiring next year. If you're interested, his post could be yours. Well, I might have to pull out all the stops with the academy to convince them we have to keep you during the transition period. That's why I wanted to make sure that you're interested in a permanent job here, in the school. I would be delighted, or I need to think about it. Yeah, sure, why not, right? We don't really have any other options right now. And we want to... Do we want to stay in the village, though? I want to try this. I'd be delighted. Excellent. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Miss de la Tour, I can't guarantee you Mr. Gavin's post, but I'll do my very best to keep you with us. As for you, don't change a thing, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much, Mr. Chastenay. It's my pleasure. Well, we've been over what I wanted to discuss, but may I ask you something a little personal? Sure, why not? Of course, I'm listening. Stop me if I'm wrong, but how can I put this? There's talk in the village. I know you had words with Mrs. Levesque at the cocktail party. Did you, by any chance... I don't know quite how to put it. Well, let me just come straight out with it. Did you, by chance, and reiterate the by chance, have any responsibility for Mrs. Levesque's accident? That's quite blunt. Let's change the subject. This is suspicious. You don't ever want to use this. You don't ever want to just change the subject when someone asks you something like this directly. What is strange option? Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Mr. Chastenay, I understand that the people of the village may harbor some romantic notions about my family, but you, of all people? I didn't know you shared these beliefs. If you're concerned about the influence of these superstitions on my efficiency as a teacher, let me put your mind at ease. I'm a woman of science. I don't give any credence to these beliefs, and I assure you that my teaching is in no way impacted. That's not what I meant to say. It's interesting, like we can only go the route of saying, yeah, we're a woman of science, so we don't believe in the supernatural at all. Or say, yeah, sure, I'm a witch and I caused this accident, or what does this mean? There was no question. In that case, I don't see why we're talking about it. Is there anything else, Mr. Chastenay? Well, no, there isn't. Then let me wish you a very good day, sir. Miss de la Tour. Okay. Awkward. As if today hadn't been emotional enough, when I get to the castle, I discover a sports car parked in front of the house. Of course, I've already guessed the identity of its owner. Walking into the hall, I find Stanislas has let himself in and is sipping a glass of whiskey as he peruses the family portraits. I would have offered you a drink, but it looks like you've already taken the matter into your own hands. It was open, so I let myself in. And I'm not sorry, since you've kept me on tenterhooks for some time. I'm already on my second refill. I thought school teachers finished work much earlier, don't they? I was held up. Daphne, we need to talk. This is again one of those options where I would like to know what the impact is. Because I would like to listen, but is this like a step towards a relationship with him or something? No, let's... Oh, this is hard. Okay, I'm listening. Looking at the state of my voicemail, I guessed you'd come over sooner or later. I'm listening. After all that's happened, I had to warn you. You need to know about our families, the village, and everything else. Okay, that's interesting. I sit on the sofa. Ignoring the armchair on the other side of the coffee table, Stanislas sits down beside me. If I could blame the alcohol for his behavior at the cocktail party, I can't continue to ignore the strong signals he's sending my way. Stan takes a deep breath and begins. Of course, there's my father, his projects and the old quarrel with the Delatour, and his sick obsession with the tower. But when I heard about Beatrice Lévesque, that's when I realized the situation was urgent. When I watched you do what you did at the cocktail party, I remembered everything I'd heard since I was a child, all those unbelievable stories of witchcraft. I've never had any real proof that any of it was true, but when I heard she was dead, well, it's been haunting me all day. I had to tell you. I have to know, so I'm just going to lay it on the line. Did you know what you were doing back there? I don't believe in magic, not at all, or I didn't know what I was doing. See, this is a better choice than what I had before. Because this is not it. I didn't know what I was... No, I didn't know what I was doing. Let's take just a pinch of responsibility here. Because, as I said last time, I still think it's very foolish to go on shouting out curses when you have blood on your hands. I don't know what to think. Since I came here, I've felt things. Between the strange dreams, the castle, and everything I've heard about my family, yes, I wanted to believe. But now, if the stories are true, then that makes me a murderer. Come on. When Mrs. Lévesque attacked me at the cocktail party, I lost it. I admit that. You can't imagine how guilty I feel. The poor woman, she didn't deserve that. I'm overwhelmed by emotion. I realize I've been holding my tears back since the director broke the news to me. I burst into tears, and Stan takes me in his arms. I let him. I'm torn by conflicted emotions. I think of Frank. He should be the one comforting me. I shouldn't let myself go like this, but strangely, I trust Stan. Maybe I judged him a bit hastily. A few minutes later, I tremulously blink away the last tears. When he's sure most of the storm is behind us, Stan gently lets go of me and, looking me straight in the eye while holding me by the shoulders, says, "Please forgive me. I've been terribly inconsiderate. Of course, you couldn't have known what would happen. I keep forgetting you're not from here. And besides, no one's told you what's happening in the village. So please, I beg you, don't feel guilty. It's us, the Maltaire, and others around here who should feel guilty for not warning you." Something else to tell me? I'm afraid I do. My father made you an offer at the cocktail party, didn't he? Well, yes, about the tower, right? He wants to gain access to it, if I understood correctly. Exactly. If he hasn't come to see you yet, it's because he's building his case for the town council. He's got Solène on it, and he's got her working day in, day out. Poor Solène. He wants everything settled before he tells you his plans. What can he really do to me? The house is legally mine. He can't throw me out just like that for no reason. Maybe, but I assure you, it's no joke. Whatever happens, you mustn't accept it. Why do you want me to refuse so much? I know, Eve. Like it or not, I've been dealing with him since I was born. He's a shark, and considering how much he resents the Delatour, I can assure you that whatever he proposes to you will serve his own interests, but more importantly, it will harm yours. Okay, interesting. These are both very good questions. So more about the De la Tour or the tower? But would he know? I'm going to go with the tower. What's so special inside the tower? According to legend, the tower has been built on some kind of magical vortex. I feel a bit silly saying this. No, you're not. That would explain a lot. The De la Tour have always been an influential family in the area. Your family has kept to their traditions despite the law and the name De la Tour, of the tower, goes from mother to daughter, and the eldest daughter has always been the spiritual guide of the community. A kind of Celtic grand priestess, if you see what I mean. Since, well, Christianity never really got very popular around here, as you've probably noticed. The story goes that your ancestor, the Grand Priestess, had a dispute with my ancestor, and my family had no choice but to curse yours to save their honor. Since that time, the Maltais have accumulated wealth and prospered, while the De la Tour have declined. Fair enough, but all that happened a long time ago. Why keep such an old quarrel alive? Not only did I do nothing to harm your family, but it looks to me like the Maltais already have the upper hand, don't they? That's where the tower comes in. As I understand it, these blessings have a price, and my father wants to get into it to lift the curse that takes its toll on my family too. And the tower's the key to lifting the curse. But I can't let Eve get inside, because he may want to harm me? Exactly. It may sound stupid, but I have to ask. Do you know where the entrance to the tower is? No, but everyone in the village knows that it was condemned after the events that tore both our families apart. So why didn't anyone tell me? Don't judge the villagers too harshly. They're naturally suspicious, especially when it comes to us. Should I brace myself for more revelations, or is that it? I guess I've told you most of it. The crux of the matter anyway, but you must have 1,000 questions. Okay, there's 3 at least. The family... maybe I can ask all of these? But yeah, your family. Also, I didn't... I kind of hoped that we will get more information from him by talking to him or listening to him. But I didn't expect that much. And for me, to be honest, it still doesn't excuse his rude behavior. But oh well. I will ask about the family. Your family? I'm curious. Can you tell me more about them? I think you've already grasped the nuts and bolts. First, there's my parents, Eve and Clotilde. Our relationship's been distant since I've been old enough to understand how they think. What do you mean? How can I sum up the Maltais method? I would say manipulation and extortion under the cover of good breeding. And if that doesn't work, then they throw money in the general direction of the problem until it's kind enough to disappear. Charming. But I'm asking myself, why would they stay in the village? I mean, with so much wealth, they could live anywhere, couldn't they? You mean somewhere less remote? You're not wrong, but don't forget they're very attached to the area with their beliefs. They're much too afraid of losing their advantages if they leave, I guess. But everything I tell you is only speculation. Eve had decided I wasn't fit to be the #1 heir long before I was old enough for him to tell me any of their little secrets. And you? Haven't you ever thought about leaving? Of course I have, but Solène and her son are stuck here, and I couldn't bring myself to leave them alone in the belly of the beast. Sure, that makes sense. Besides, I strongly suspect my father is, to some degree, responsible for the death of Solène's husband. A good accidental death just the way he likes, whether it's supernatural or not. After all, seeing as his own son wasn't up to the task, he needed an heir to pass his fine values on to, right? But that's awful. Welcome to my world. Of course, I'm doing my best to protect Pierre from all this, but I'm afraid I'm fighting a losing battle. He adores his grandfather, of course, and with good reason. He can be a very charming guy when he wants to be. As for Solène, she's always been kept out of it. She's always been the perfect daughter, and my parents, with their traditional values, didn't have many ambitions for her. I think all they wanted for their daughter was a good marriage that would, preferably, help the family affairs. Stan stops talking, his eyes far away. I'm lost for words. Finally, he breaks the silence before it becomes awkward. Well, that's it. Now you know everything. Okay, then let's ask about the father's plans. Tell me more about your father's plans. As I told you, he wants to get inside the tower, and I'm afraid he'll stop at nothing to do it. If I know him, he'll certainly try to win you over at first. He's currently building a case for the town council to open the tower to the public. In return, they would pay all the maintenance costs. It could be worth listening to this offer, don't you think? The costs to keep the castle afloat can't be sneezed at, and the money I got in the will isn't inexhaustible. I don't know how else to say it, and I don't have any proof except my own experience and the trust you may put in my word, but I assure you, to accept anything from my father would be a very bad idea. During your grandmother's time, he was resigned to not getting into the tower. But now things have changed, and he wants to take advantage of the opportunity. I'm sure he'll come up with a very attractive financial deal, and he's counting on your supposed naivete to get what he's after. All right, let's say I refuse. What happens next? That depends. Depends on what? It depends on whether or not you believe in all this witchcraft stuff. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Perhaps, but it is a very durable concept for most people who live here. And whatever your feelings about it, Eve is still a very real threat. You're not the first person to oppose him. But you've got a few cards up your sleeve that might make you the last. Okay, this is a bit of a clearer choice. I'm wondering, but do we still have a chance to get back with Frank? But either way, I don't want to date a rude guy. I'm sorry. I think we've covered it. I think we've covered everything. There's still something I wanted to talk to you about. I can see in his eyes what kind of subject we're about to discuss. But wouldn't I be putting my chances to reconnect with Frank in jeopardy by getting involved in that? Yes, thank you. No, see him to the door. Goodbye. I know what you're about to say. I thought I was clear. I'm sorry, but... Spare me the "it's not you, it's me" speech. I get it. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. Days go by, and still nothing from Yves Malter. I must admit, finding out about his plans has left me in a state of permanent apprehension. I try not to worry about it. I mean, really, what's the risk? Even if I decided to accept, in theory, the idea of the supernatural, I have an inexplicable sense of being untouchable, even from a so-called curse from the Malter. Maybe it's a bit presumptuous, but I feel like my family name acts as a kind of lucky charm, protecting me from anything bad. I've spoken to Frank on the phone a few times. He's helped me get my head straight, put everything into perspective. I must admit, I miss him. He promised he would do his best to come back soon. He said he had news and that we have to talk when he gets back. Knowing him, I'm not sure if I should be worried or excited. Then there's the Bourtines. I haven't seen them in a while. Sometimes I think of Solène Malter. I'm not sure I've got her figured out, but I felt there was something going on when I met her at the cocktail party. Perhaps I could call her. Maybe we could see each other again. What should I do? Oh, the Bourtines or to Solène? I'm going to try with Solène. When I call Solène, she's surprised to hear from me, but she welcomes the idea of having a coffee together. We meet up in the afternoon in a small tea room with a terrace that looks out on a tree-filled square. Solène is waiting for me, cup in hand, watching her son who plays with the other children in the playground next to the terrace. The reason for the choice of this tea room is suddenly clear, considering the strategic location it represents for the young mothers of the village. But since my miscarriage, I avoid these kinds of places like the plague, as they tend to dredge up a stew of bad memories. I try to keep my face composed as I sit down with Solène. I guess I don't do a great job, since she asks me with a concerned face. Okay, just a second. She's like... this means that she's keeping away from playgrounds and stuff with a lot of children, but she's a teacher at a school, and those kids aren't grown-ups yet either. Okay. Are you alright? Tell her what's wrong, tell her everything is alright. We don't really have that many people to open up to around here, I guess, so... Yeah, I'm going to tell her. Yes, sorry, it's this kind of cafe with a playground. It reminds me of a time in my life that was difficult. Oh, yes, of course, what an idiot. I should have known, seeing as you're a de la Tour. What do you mean? Well, the de la Tour always had, childbearing issues. There is a hush. Sorry, that was inconsiderate. No, it's nothing. It's me. I shouldn't let myself turn back to that page of my life so easily, or I'll never get past it. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's dig further. But what do you mean about the de la Tour always had childbearing issues? That's something they say in the village. You know, all the local stories. It seems that the de la Tour, in exchange for being the spiritual leaders of our community, had to pay a kind of tribute. and that tribute was the sacrifice of the firstborn of each generation. Wow. Okay, this is very accepting. That's why I lost my baby, or my mother only had one child. Oh, but did she? Oh, okay, maybe. Maybe she didn't just have one. But if I follow that logic, my mother would have lost a child before having me, right? Yes. Well, that's impossible. She was barely 18 when I was born. Listen, Daphne, it's just what they say in the village, and I'm sorry if I offended you. Let's talk about something else, okay? Okay, wait. The mother moved away, though, before she gave birth to Daphne? Didn't she? Or am I misremembering? Because if you moved before giving birth, then would that mean that if it's connected to this whole curse thing, that maybe it really only has power in the village, and if you move away, it's okay? Oh, but then, no, that doesn't make sense, because Daphne was also not in the village when she had the miscarriage. Okay, forget it. We chat for a while. The conversation is frequently interrupted by Pierre-Yves, who wants to show us a fascinating stone, to ask for a cookie, or to recount the incredible adventure that just happened to him in the playground's fort. It's Solène who finally cuts to the chase, saying, out of nowhere, "So, now that we're through with the niceties, we can get to the real reason you called, don't you think? I'm fairly sure Stan has told you about my father's plans, and you want to ferret out more information, don't you?" Our conversation has suddenly become a minefield. I need to choose my next words very carefully. I mean, I didn't want to necessarily get the informations out of her, but more to get her on our side. But yeah, we're not talking our way out of this. Let's remain being honest. I didn't come for that, but since you're asking, I must admit I'm curious to know more. Ah, I knew it. You Delator really are all the same. What? But no, I knew it was too good to be true, that you had to have a hidden agenda when you called. She stands up and, glaring down at me, says, "Don't waste your time. You won't get anything out of me." She takes her son by the hand and they leave in a haste. As for me, I stay there, dazed and slightly wounded by what's happened. Even if I've no real proof, something tells me that Solène's disproportionate reaction is the result of Eve's determination to undermine me. I pay the bill and go back to the castle. Yeah, that didn't go like I wanted. What should I do next? Okay, we can still go to the Botine. That's good. I didn't expect that. Oh, that's a pity. I thought Solène would be on our side. Oh well. When I knock on the lodge door, Mrs. Botine answers. "Oh, hello, miss. What brings you here?" It looks as though she's put her knitting aside to greet me. Next to the fire, in an armchair, I make out the silhouette of Mr. Botine. He looks at me over his newspaper, the local news, and puffs on his pipe as I enter the room. He nods me a greeting. "I was just passing to see how you are. It's been a while since we saw each other." Yes, it has. Time flies. When my husband and I heard about Mrs. Lévesque, we felt terrible for the poor woman. Smells like another Maltaire trick, if you're asking me. Doesn't make sense. It's not the Maltaire's fault this time. Wow. Okay, but is this saying that we did it? That's really the big issue with with choice-based games, when you don't quite know what you're actually saying. Let's go with it. I'm afraid it's not the Maltaire's fault this time. You mean... Yes, I think it's my fault. I didn't know. How could I? No one told me anything. Oh, miss, I'm so sorry. If I'd guessed the legends were true. Did you hear that, Gerard? We should have warned her. Mr. Bottine lays his newspaper down on his knees and regards us with a piercing gaze. Come on, Gilbert. You were saying just a couple of days ago that those stories were nothing but stories. What's done is done, Mrs. Bottine. But if you know anything, it's high time you told me, don't you think? I get the feeling there are a lot of things I don't know about the village, my family, the Maltaire. Can we ask about everything, please? I'm still curious about the tower. Tell me what you know about the tower and the local legends. What do you want to know precisely? Yves Maltaire mentioned something about a sphinx and a druidess. Oh, yes, that legend's very well known in the area. I think it's linked to the story of your family. You can see the sphinx symbol all over the village, and you are the descendant of the family whose job was to protect the tower and its contents. Come on, I'll show you. Mrs. Bottine puts her coat on. I follow her to the tower. She points out a shield with the coat of arms of the family carved into the outer wall. See? I can clearly make out a tower surrounded by two sphinxes. We return, without speaking, to the lodge. But the sphinx has nothing to do with Egypt. It looks more like the one from Greek mythology, doesn't it? Like the sphinx that protected Thebes, the one who asked Oedipus the riddles, I suppose. Oh, well, miss, that I couldn't say. A few years ago, Gerard and I were watching a documentary about Egypt on the TV, and we said to ourselves, that looks like the statue in the village. Do you remember, Gerard? Mr. Bottine mutters something unintelligible without glancing up from his newspaper. Okay, that explains the sphinx. What about the druidess? Oh, well, that must have something to do with the stories about the tower, but I'm not sure I know much more. Tell me what you know. What they say is that the region is magical. It used to be a place of pilgrimage in the old days. People came to be healed or to join the festivities for the passing of the seasons. I couldn't tell you why, but the legends say that your ancestors used to perform miracles. My ancestors? The De la Tour? Yes, the De la Tour. But this was before they built the tower. I don't know what they were called back then. Also, your family had a duty to protect the village. As the place was magical, it attracted demons, and there were rituals to be performed so that the source of power wasn't polluted by these evil spirits. When the Christians colonized the country, the region closed in on itself. The villagers built a tower over the source to keep it secret, and the village became a place of remembrance. I didn't know this period. It was long before I was born. It was my grandmother who told me the stories of before the Maltaire arrived. What have the Maltaire got to do with all this? It began when Yves' grandfather, old Gustave Maltaire, with Yves' grandfather, okay. When he was a child, the de la Tour fostered him at the castle because he had a gift for miracles. He was an orphan from a family of marsh folk. To be fostered like that was very lucky for him, but apparently it wasn't enough. He wanted more. I knew him a little. He was already an old man, but he was a difficult character. I remember he used to give me the creeps when I was a girl. Anyway, it's since then that the Maltaire began to amass their fortune. That's when the accidents started to happen. If anyone went against the Maltaire, something bad happened to them. Every time. And then the de la Tour began to wither away. In the end, there was only your grandmother left. And then you came. Why didn't you tell me all this before? You came from the city. You didn't know anything about all this. If we told you about spirits of the forest or magical sources, what would you have thought? And we thought it was just old stories. We weren't born in the time of the miracles, and we don't know much anyway, my husband and I. Ooh, okay. What about the curse? Tell me what you know about this curse. I can't tell you much about this, miss. The de la Tour were known to be miracle makers, but it's been a long time since anything like that has happened. It hasn't been in my lifetime, but in the old days, they used to say that your family had a gift. Can you tell me what happened with Mrs. Levesque? Maybe it will jog my memory. I tell her what happened. It must have been the words you said without realizing, and the wound that must have been what unleashed the spell. If I had known, I would have been more careful. It's a shame your grandmother's no longer with us. She would have explained everything to you. Yes, I imagine she must have known a lot more about all of this. And yet, I still think that maybe it's a Maltaire trick. That would be pretty twisted, don't you think? Oh, well, nothing would surprise me with those lowlifes. By the way, Gérard saw the Maltaire boy's car in the yard the other day. Didn't you, Gérard? I hope he wasn't bothering you. Yes, he did drop in, but don't worry, he behaved himself. Ah, I'm glad to hear that. If he bothers you, just give us a call. Gérard has been looking for an excuse to put a cartridge on that one's rear end for a good long time. Thank you, but I don't think that will be necessary. A lot of questions. Tell me more about Mrs. Levesque. You seem to know her. I wouldn't exactly say know her. Let's say she was the talk of the village some years back. Really? Why? Her husband was a brute. The type who drinks too much, if you see what I mean. There were several incidents. It went on for a few years. Beatrice Levesque would never have filed for divorce. And Yves Maltaire was very supportive when her husband disappeared. Disappeared? Do you mean he died? No, well, I don't know. Just like that, he was never seen again. They say Yves Maltaire drove him out of the village. Beatrice Levesque was sure it was thanks to the Maltaire, and as she worked at the town hall, well, it was best not to speak ill of Mr. Mayor when she was around. I see. That said, Yves did a good thing there, didn't he? That depends. No one really knows what happened to Levek, and even so, one good deed doesn't redeem a lifetime of wrongs, does it? But that means her son Jean-Baptiste is an orphan? Well, yes, but don't worry too much about him. His aunt took him in. You must know her. She's the wife of the fishmonger, at the market. They're a good family. I'm sure they'll take care of him as if he was their own. That's some consolation, at least. I have to go. Thanks for answering my questions. So, now you know everything. Well, Gérard, we told her everything, didn't we? Mr. Bourtine puffs on his pipe, thinking, then nods in agreement. My wife and I, we're just the wardens. We were never in the know. Your grandmother, she could have told you, warned you. Yeah, both of these really, it's a lot, but I also still have to know more. I have to know more. Who else can give me answers? There's only the Maltaire who might know more, and yet Yves would know for sure. But I'm not sure even his wife or his children are in his confidence. But surely there's somebody else, isn't there? Yes, there's Sophie, your mother. She's the last de la Tour to know the secrets. What should I do next? Wait for Yves? Oh, okay, I guess. Days go by, then weeks. And Yves Maltaire is conspicuous by his absence. I try to concentrate on my classes at school, but after all the revelations, my mind is often elsewhere. And to top it all off, the principal told me I was going to be inspected by the local education authority, which adds to the general climate of anxiety. I'm in the forest. It's the same dream again, the one I had last month. I have a sense of déjà vu, but something has changed. I run to escape the presence that follows me. Once again, I reach the pool in the clearing. I draw closer to glimpse my reflection. It's the same image as last time, but it's more precise. Almost more real. My hair is longer and it's completely white. My eyes seem to shine with a strange light. There's something magical, for lack of a better word, in my appearance. I like the mysterious side, the wildness that I see in this Daphne. I touch the reflection and, after a moment of darkness, I'm back in the garden. When I come to the statue of the Sphinx, her gaze is different. She looks ahead with defiance and determination. That's when everything changes. I'm driven by the strength and stability that seems to emanate from the statue. This time, I don't let myself fall into the darkness. This time, I find the courage to turn around and confront the threat the Sphinx stares, her gaze immovable. That's when I see the beast for the first time. We watch each other for a second that seems to last forever. Then the beast hurls itself at me. It's at that moment, when its claws are poised to lacerate my belly, that I shudder awake. Ooh, that was a lot of information. And I'm wondering, these dreams, do they show us what our choices have led us to so far? On what path we are? Maybe we'll find out more next time. Bye bye!